Well, we finally have a release date for God of War Ragnarok. It'll be arriving November 9th, 2022. I still thought that they were going to go with November 11th. I get that there's some Norse mythology behind the 9th and why it made sense, but regardless, the game is going to be coming out later this year. We'll see if it is competing with Elden Ring for that Game of the Year award, but for now, all eyes are on maybe potentially gameplay later this month or maybe in August. Regardless, there's a long time between now and November. I'm certain that Sony's going to show off much more of the game, but my personal expectation is that there probably will be an exclusive state of play at some point, maybe 15 to 20 minutes of pure gameplay. Now, while God of War Ragnarok did get this announcement almost immediately afterwards, we also saw a game that's supposed to be coming out later this year being announced to be delayed to early 2023. That's Forspoken. They announced on their Twitter, Square Enix, saying that they made the strategic decision to move the game to January 24th, 2023. I'm fairly certain that strategic decision means that they just do not want anything to do with releasing near the behemoth that will be God of War Ragnarok. Interestingly though, a game that will be going head to head, I suppose, with God of War Ragnarok will be Skull and Bones. You know, that pirate game that we saw, I believe, at like E3 2017 last. As we've talked on the channel about over the years and also most recently, the game's development has been an absolute disaster. So you may be wondering, why is this game releasing in November if it's been having such a disastrous development? Well, as Kotaku reports, it was originally aiming for early summer, then pushed to September, now November. I was told there was supposed to be closed test this month, but was cancelled due to the state of the build. It's coming either way though, due to existing government subsidy agreement. So yes, if you didn't know, the Singapore government is, I believe, partially funding this game to some degree, and it has to release no matter what. So yes, if you're wondering why Skull and Bones is actually releasing later this year, it's nothing to do with the game's quality. It probably sounds like it's going to need more time, but no, it has to come out because of the government ordeals and money that's related to it. So we'll see how this goes, but it definitely sounds like it's a recipe for disaster. But another game that actually was revealed by Ubisoft at E3 2017, I believe, with a CGI trailer, was Beyond Good and Evil 2, and Ubisoft confirmed the other day that the game is still in active development. That is yet another game under their belt that has had a messy development, as it has lost key lead developers over the time, and it's unclear where the game is at. We haven't really seen much of it the last couple of years. In other Ubisoft news, it has been announced that the company will be pulling online from multiple older games, which will also take away access to the games that have DLC content. This includes Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed 3, which will remove all access to DLC, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Liberation, Driver San Francisco, Far Cry 3, Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands, and a couple of other games. This is kind of an issue that's been brought up in the games preservation community, and this is going to be an increasing problem as the industry becomes more focused on digital-only releases, which are only accessible through having an online connection. There seems to be at least two solutions that could happen here. Ubisoft patches it that players still have access to the single player content that, they purchased, or, in maybe a couple of years they re-release these games having all of the DLC content included, but players have to pay a premium for it. Ultimately, this ordeal is nothing new. The EULA that you have to accept when starting up a game pretty much states that you do not have ownership of your game. You are signing a license, and these companies, especially a company like Ubisoft, can do whatever they want with this release. They can re-release it as many times as they want. They could be as anti-consumer. That is their product, and unfortunately, players are pretty much at the mercy of these companies, which is again why these companies have been so fierce with fighting against any efforts of game preservation. The very first of its kind NFT console was announced just the other day. It's called the Polyum 1, and they most certainly did rip off the GameCube logo for it, which kind of just goes hand in hand with NFTs and stealing. But here are some details about the Polyum 1, and it says that as of now, the market is still new and most Web3 games are not fun to play like traditional games. That's quite the admission. We are building for the future, not for tomorrow. So yeah, that is the NFT console of the future. I don't know really what to expect out of it. I mean, we've just seen so many console failures over the years, and this kind of has the writing all over it. So yeah, not very exciting. It doesn't even sound like they're excited in this, and that's kind of the problem with a lot of these NFT projects. There doesn't seem to be much creativity behind any of it. It's all just money focused, and with the NFT market right now collapsing, we'll see how this turns out in the future, I suppose. If anything, we'll probably get a good laugh about it, and anybody who actually purchases this console, I imagine it'll probably be collecting a lot of dust over the next couple of decades. The golden age of Bioware is long gone, and now all eyes turn to what the future of franchises like Mass Effect and Dragon Age will turn into. Because honestly, I don't know what to expect out of this new Bioware. We've had Anthem, we've had Mass Effect Andromeda, which in EA's own words were pretty much failures. So we'll see what happens, but there are some reasons to feel a little bit more optimistic. Mary DeMarle, she was the lead writer on Deus Ex Human Revolution, Mankind Divided, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and she recently left Eidos Montreal for a senior narrative director gig at Bioware. This is extremely encouraging, as I honestly think the Deus Ex franchise, the writing on those games has been phenomenal. Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the best narrative experiences last year. Didn't sell as well as it should have, but I'm actually excited. This is a great move for Bioware, who's desperately in need of some narrative talent, and this is a good sign. The next renowned AAA video game developer to be jumping into the mobile games industry appears to be Bungie, according to a new report saying that the publisher is working with Chinese company NetEase with their next mobile experience. It is said to be an unannounced FPS mobile game, and yes, people are already saying Destiny Immortal. We'll see how it turns out in its actual gameplay, but for now it has been said that this project has been in development for well over 2 years now, and I'm sure that some reveal will be coming in the future so people stop calling it Destiny Immortal. But honestly, expectations, who knows? I just know that anything that's usually coming in the mobile games industry from AAA developers seems to be extremely greedy with lots of loot boxes and terrible monetization, so that will be my expectation until something is actually shown by Bungie to prove me otherwise. In my last video, we discussed a pretty terrible Electronic Arts tweet in which they said they're a 10, but they only like playing single-player games. This garnered a widespread reaction from across this gaming industry, in which many developers, many who worked for EA, called out the company, including many gamers. They were ratioed many times on this tweet, and interestingly, from USA Today, we got some behind-the-scenes conversations that were happening at EA, and apparently, before they apologized, they were thinking about taking a different route. As the negative reactions grew and most of us began becoming more assertive, a plan was put together very haphazardly to have other internal studios reply to that tweet. One of our sources explained they were desperately trying to turn things into a positive. Even people working on multiplayer games didn't like it. Some EA employees pointed out the roasting EA strategy would feed into the big bad EA narrative that even their own studios and franchises don't like them. So yes, apparently all of the EA accounts, Battlefield, FIFA, all of them are going to respond roasting EA, and I think, well, they thought it was a good idea. Some of them. Apparently multiple social media managers who worked for EA opted out straight away because they realized how stupid of an idea it was. And most interestingly, it's revealed that according to two sources, the main EA account isn't actually managed by EA's internal social brand or communications team. So I suppose maybe it's an outside PR firm or something, but very weird enough. But it's obvious whoever sent that tweet did not know EA's history, their history of disrespecting single-player games so many times. Recently, YouTuber Upper Echelon Gaming published a very damning report about Quantic Labs, a QA company that assisted in the development of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, his report pretty much went over Quantic Labs lying to CD Projekt Red in many respects to the company's size and the expertise of the developers that were assisting in QA. But the problem is that this report from Upper Echelon really went a lot farther than it should have. What do I mean by that? Well, we have articles like this coming from Paul Tassi of Forbes. Report claims Cyberpunk 2077 bugs weren't caught because a QA company lied to CDPR. That is just total nonsense, and that's actually not what Upper Echelon et al. Reported. He ended up having some follow-up videos which pretty much stated as much. The thing is, people don't understand that CD Projekt Red, they have their own QA department. Their QA department did a lot of work on Cyberpunk 2077, and you know what the QA department found before launch? The game was a mess, and you know what they told management? The game is a mess, and you know what management said? We'll figure it out after launch, don't worry, we figured it out with The Witcher 3, and they did not figure it out. Now, I posted these tweets on Twitter. If you haven't seen them, I'll quickly go over them. I did speak to a few different CDPR sources, and they did refute the claim that, this QA company was responsible for why Cyberpunk 2077 was a mess at launch. They were not at all. They had a very minimal role, because CDPR does most of their testing internally, especially for the bigger issues. As one developer told me, we knew about the bugs that people were complaining about. This was not something that was unknown to us, but we did not have time to focus on it. We were crunching like crazy, so we were paper thin at the end. Specifically in regards to console performance, I was told by one source that it was absolute horseshit that the company didn't know about it. But continuing on with these tweets, same developer also said that more important or technical aspects of the game was tested internally, especially later in development, as complex bugs required in-depth involvement with the development team. Quantic's QA role was minimal, with much of the issues being on CDPR's own mismanagement. Anything that flows in is screened by internal QA, production, and developers. It's not like we're morons and spend hours on obviously bad bugs. Management not knowing about the bugs/issues is laughable. They knew everyone knew they would play the game all day, every day. Now, to quickly further elaborate on this, what I was told by my sources was the fact that Cyberpunk 2077, the biggest problem with it was mismanagement and unrealistic deadlines. Now, I see a lot of people bring up the fact that the game was delayed multiple times already throughout 2020, so they couldn't possibly delay it again. Well, the issue with that is that the developers that were working on the game don't even think that a release date should have been given in the first place. But yeah, my understanding on this entire ordeal is that these external QA companies that assisted CDPR in testing Cyberpunk 2077 prior to launch were mostly working on the environmental and quest aspects of the game, and not major, features and components that were breaking down behind the scenes that the internal team saw for themselves and were discussing with management and were pretty much just given a shrug by them. So for those who are subscribed to the channel, one, thank you, and two, you guys have probably seen by now the many videos I've done on Cyberpunk 2077, and none of this has to be really that surprising, because this is all stuff that we've talked about in the past. And right now, from the sources that I've talked to, there's a lot of uncertainty with the future of CDPRs, so we'll have to see what happens. Hell, at this point we're still waiting for Cyberpunk 2077's free DLC, and next year probably the one and only expansion for the game. But in other news, we have Rockstar Games' parent company Take-Two Interactive once again going after the modding community. We have Flat2VR saying it's a sad day for the community, as Take-Two has submitted a quite anti-consumer DMCA request to remove all VR mods from their games, GTA 5, RDR2, Mafia. And then I believe one of the lead developers on the project saying, I just received a DMCA notice. They're demanding that I remove all copyrighted works from my Patreon page. I immediately asked for clarification, since it is my belief that I'm not hosting any such materials. As you know, I do create and distribute original modifications for those games, original pieces of software of my own creation that allow users to experience those games in a different and hopefully more intense and profound way. However, none of my mods are built using software belonging to Take-Two, and the modifications are not intended to replace their game, nor are they means of exploiting Take-Two Interactive's assets. All of my mods require that users buy and own the games before they can add my mods. Now the thing is, Take-Two Interactive doesn't care. As soon as they see anything in their way of making any little bit of money, they go after it. And this is yet another example of it. And this is something that has become kind of the standard that we've seen with Take-Two Interactive. If you make a really good mod, they're going after you. And that's why I still think that the role-playing mods that went viral the last couple of years, like GTA 5M, I think that's one example. Yeah, I believe in the long run, Take-Two Interactive will eventually go after them. This gaming company does not have any respect for what the modding community is doing. Now, this was not the only big Rockstar Games news to break, because, as reported by insider Tez2, as per a reliable source with clear accuracy on Rockstar plans, remasters of GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 were on the table a few years ago, but Rockstar chose not to proceed with the projects in mind. The poor reception of the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition might be a reason behind that decision, and Kotaku confirmed with their own sources that this is exactly what happened. The GTA Trilogy, the reception to it, has pretty much persuaded Rockstar just to put all of their attention on GTA 6 for the time being, but they did say that after GTA 6 is complete and out, maybe these are projects that they'll revisit. So I know a lot of people viewed this news as disappointing, but I don't really consider it so, especially if the effort wasn't going to be there. As we saw with the Trilogy Remaster, if it was going to be thrown off to a company like Grove Street, I don't want it. Especially in regards to Red Dead Redemption, maybe it would have gotten some upscale textures, but I really think it needs a bigger overhaul, similar to what Naughty Dog is currently doing to Last of Us. Like seeing the Red Dead Redemption 2 gameplay in Red Dead Redemption is exactly what I would have wanted. Not to mention that there are some very big plot holes with those two games, and I think those are things that Rockstar in the long run should fix. But I do find it very interesting that publicly we heard Take-Two Interactive earlier this year call the trilogy of the Definitive Edition a huge success, but behind the scenes, Rockstar's, they do not want to attempt doing another one of those again. And it is also worth mentioning that a couple of years ago, there was a Red Dead Redemption remaster coming from the gaming community. Modders were putting together, I think it was Red Dead Redemption and the GTA 5 engine or something, and you know who shut that down? Take-Two Interactive. They threatened the modder with I believe it was like a $500,000 lawsuit. So kind of disappointing that we didn't get that one. The acquisition season in the gaming industry has continued, with Blizzard acquiring Spellbreak studio Proletariat, and what they're going to be working on isn't a new IP or a new franchise or continuing to innovate further with another experience. No, they're going to be working on World of Warcraft. That's what I believe all 100 developers will be doing. They're going to bolster up that development team because that's what Activision Blizzard's strategy has been the last couple of years. It's why Vicarious Visions isn't working on a new Tony Hawk game. They're working on Blizzard's properties. Now, the fun with Blizzard is not slowing down, because Blizzard CEO Mike Ybarra actually finally discussed Diablo Immortal's controversial microtransactions. You know, the thing that everybody's been asking for the last month has been spamming Blizzard executives, and we've just been hearing nothing. We have been getting some answers in regards to the monetization to Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2, but nothing on Diablo Immortal after the game director for Diablo Immortal, Wyatt Chang, went on a spree of defending it with a bunch of BS statements, and then they just went quiet. Well, now Mike Ybarra, in a new interview with the Los Angeles Times, has responded, and he stood by the game's microtransactions. As IGN reports, he claimed they were implemented to make the game more accessible. When we think about monetization at the very highest level it was, how do we give a free Diablo experience to hundreds of millions of people where they can literally do 99.5% of everything in the game? And he continues, he also defended the way that the microtransactions are implemented, as they largely only come into play in the game's later stages. The monetization comes in at the end game. The philosophy was always to lead with great gameplay. I swear, Blizzard trying to, act like their values are here with this experience is just laughable, but he says, we lead with great gameplay and make sure that hundreds of millions of players can go through the whole campaign without any cost. From that standpoint, I really feel good about it as an introduction to Diablo. Meanwhile, Diablo Immortal is still rolling in cash. I believe it's making about $1 million a day, but it's nowhere near the top of the mobile gaming industry, in which a lot of the titans are making, I believe, like hundreds of millions of dollars monthly, and that is mostly because of China, a market that it seems like Diablo Immortal will not be releasing in anytime soon, after the company's official Weibo account was caught criticizing the Chinese president. But going back to Ybarra's remarks, what I will add is that I find it as such a lazy argument that, hey, you can play through the campaign and you'll actually still have fun. That's what 99% of mobile games say, but they suck you in, because if you actually want to continue with the experience, the end game, you're going to have to cough up cash. If you want to enjoy PvP, you're going to have to cough up cash, or you have some moronic Twitch streamer who's going to be going on a 50 kill streak as he laughs endlessly at your misery. Now, another aspect of Ybarra's remarks that was picked up by VGC is his insinuation about the game's ratings. So if you don't know, on the App Store, the game is currently rated 4.5 out of 5. On the Google Play Store, it's 3.7 out of 5. It was a lot lower before, but it has risen over time. And according to the LA Times, Ybarra pointed to these ratings as a defense of the title, implying that complaints about microtransactions are not prevalent among the game's wider audience. And that's because, let's be honest here, the casual gaming audience has just become normalized to this mobile monetization behavior, because every game does this. So now it's just, I don't even think it's acceptable. It's just an expectation that everybody has, and that is a problem. This has been said numerous times by many people over the last couple of weeks and months, but Diablo Immortal is not a Diablo game made for Diablo fans. It again is made for this casual audience that could be milked dry. This is why Ybarra does not at all want to mention that Metacritic score, which is at an all-time low. The hardcore gaming audience's opinion doesn't seem to matter to Blizzard in this regard. Most definitely, the mobile gaming industry has earned its reputation of being a cesspool of wasted potential, and Diablo Immortal is wasted potential because I agree, it does have some decent, some pretty good gameplay. And Ybarra is, I'm gonna be honest, he's full of shit here. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean Blizzard needs to do it. They could lead by example, but they chose not to. And ultimately, they want to make as much money as possible, and that's why people spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, that's perfectly normal in their opinion. When in my opinion, that shows a major problem in this gaming industry, and it also shows, like this Waypoint article points out, it shows that self-regulation is a failure in this games industry, and that's why lawmakers across this world are closing in on loot boxes and the way that gaming publishers have gotten away with far too long with monetizing these experiences. Because yes, say what you want, but loot boxes are psychologically manipulative and equivalent to gambling. Also, for what it's worth, me saying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, I actually feel like that's misleading because, as players have discovered, it can take over $540,000 to max out your Diablo Immortal character, not $100,000. As this viral Reddit thread explains, there is a hidden whale mechanic when you upgrade a 5 out of 5 star gem to level 10 that is attached to a piece of gear above rank 6. That 5 out of 5 star gem would undergo a process called awakening. When a 5 out of 5 star gem awakens, it gains an additional 5 slots around it, which allows an additional 5 legendary gems to be slotted into it, which the gems have to be individually upgraded again to rank 10. And remember, just to get one legendary gem, it can cost somewhere around $15,000. We obviously already did that in my last video. I think it took us about $37,000 with the fan-made loot box simulator to get 6 legendary gems, and based on this logic, to actually get a fully maxed out Diablo Immortal character, you would need 36 legendary gems, which again, that could cost maybe $500,000, again, based on your luck. So interviewers, especially those who are interviewing executives about their pay-to-win mobile experience, please do your fucking research so we can get a proper answer out of somebody like Mike Ybarra, because I would love to know an explanation, a real explanation for why a hidden whale mechanic exists and players could end up spending upwards of $500,000 on a video game, because that is ridiculous, that is unacceptable, and I just don't see an actual explanation being possible. And I would love to see Mike Ybarra stumble on words trying to come up with something for that, because there's no excuse for that. Whale or not or whatever, that is something that has to change in this gaming industry, because I fear that this mobile monetization will not stick to mobile and will eventually make its way to console and PC. Last but not least, we have an update on a story that we talked about a few weeks ago, and that was in regards to Fallout 76's development. Kotaku published a very in-depth report about the problems that the development team faced. There was infighting between Bethesda, Maryland, and Austin. Many of the top executives at Bethesda just didn't seem to care all that much about the project at all. Todd Howard's involvement was referred to as him just coming by and seagulling, which pretty much he would just come in and shit on ideas and then leave because he was more interested in focusing on his actual single-player RPG Starfield. And there was a lot of other allegations about the QA department being mistreated, lots of crunch, and it just sounded like the project was an overall mess. Well, now we have Matt Booty, the head of Xbox Game Studios, defending the company. In a new all-hands meeting on Thursday, there was a Q&A session in which Booty was asked to respond, and he said that Xbox took crunch reports about its studios seriously, but added the challenge with a lot of these articles, the Kotaku one, is that they look backwards, sometimes pretty far back in time. Crunch culture is, if you go back 10 years ago, it's a little unfair to put that on one studio, said Booty. It was just part of the industry. I don't say that to justify it, I'm just saying it was part of the culture of the industry. I literally slept under my desk early in my career, and we looked at that like a badge of honor. Booty said that the working conditions detailed in the report were in the past. I know from talking to Bethesda leadership that we do not have a situation where people are crunching. We've got this bullying atmosphere. I'm confident about that. He acknowledged that crunch could still take place without his knowledge and said that employees needed to trust in Xbox's internal processes. Now, it is worth mentioning that while Booty tries to make it out to be that this report was in regards to like Skyrim's development, 10 years ago, that's not at all the case. The report was mostly about Fallout 76 and the chaos that happened behind the scenes with that project, which again was Bethesda's last release. And another big part of that Kotaku report was the fact that Xbox has been taking a hands-off approach, which is a problem because I definitely think a company like Bethesda and soon Blizzard needs some hands-on work. I believe Xbox will soon have 35 to 36 gaming studios under them. That is a lot of companies and a lot of internal politics and all kinds of stuff that happens. And this is a concern I've raised in the past, but I do have to wonder how they will manage over all of that. Sure, I don't know how Starfield's development will turn out. I imagine it's going to be far better than Fallout 76, but I do have questions about the next mess that happens and how Xbox handles all of it. Because most definitely there are going to be issues that happen in the future, and how they respond is going to be important. But for the time being, with one of the heads of Xbox saying, "Oh no, we talked to Bethesda, they said things are good," that's not exactly encouraging. Anyway, as usual, we talked about a lot of stuff going on in this games industry, and I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.